Hey guys, so today we want to talk about mindfulness. The goals of mindfulness practice are simple: reducing the stress and increasing positive emotions. We're gaining more control over your thoughts and seeing the world more clearly and honestly. So, what is mindfulness? It's living intentionally with awareness of the present moment, without judging it or rejecting it. It's just being in the moment without becoming too attached to it. The mindfulness skills are a specific group of behaviors that we practice. And when we pull it all together, they make up how we act in mindful ways, greater awareness. What is mindfulness practice? Mindfulness is all about being fully present and aware of what's happening in the moment without judging or attachment to it. It's about paying attention to your thoughts and emotions and physical sensations without getting caught up in them. Meditation's one way of practicing mindfulness. It involves sitting, standing, lying quietly for a specific period of time and focusing your mind on something. Take your breath. Contemplative prayer is another form of mindfulness practice. This is more spiritual nature, and it can include practices like Christian centering prayers, the rosary, Jewish schemas, Islamic Safi practice, and Hindu Raju yoga. There's various ways to include um, spirituality into mindfulness. Wise mind is a state of mind that we're looking at becoming. We want to get to wise mind, and to do that, we need to look at the mindsets that we're usually in. Often we go to reasonable mind where we rationalize things. We're focused on the task, and when you're in reasonable mind, you're fueled by the facts. Reason, logic, pragmatic, values, and feelings are less important in this state of mind. Then when we go into emotion mind, it's where in emotion mind you're ruled by moods, feelings, and urges to do or say things. More impulsive. The facts, reason, and logic are not important at that moment. So when we bridge them together, we want to get to wise mind, the balance of the two. So the wisdom within each person, seeing the value of both reason and emotion, brings the left brain and the right brain together. More walking a middle path, looking at what the reasonable facts are and what our emotions are. This is how we take hold of our mind. It uses two sets of skills. The what skills are what we're doing. How skills are how we're doing it. Pretty simple, right? So the what and how skills. What skills are specific actions you take to be mindful, such as observing, describing, participating. And the how skills are the techniques you're using to practice this, like being non-judgmental, one-minded, and effective. So when practicing mindfulness, it's important to focus on one what skill at a time. For example, you might spend one moment observing your breath, then the next moment participating in a conversation. The how skills, such as non-judgment or one-mindedness and effectiveness, should be used simultaneously while practicing the what skill. So for example, if you're using the participate skill during a conversation, you should be fully engaged in that conversation, without judgment, without multitasking, in a way that helps you reach your goals. This might involve immersing yourself in the conversation, being present in body and spirit. Instead of thinking about other things or ruminating on past events, by practicing this what skill, you'll likely get more out of the conversation and be more present in the moment. In short, the what skills are actions you take to be mindful. The how skills are the techniques you're using to practice them. By focusing on one what skill at a time and using the how skill simultaneously, you'll engage more fully in the present moment and get more out of your mindfulness. Next, how. skill is non-judgmental. See what you're observing and participating in, but don't evaluate it as good or bad. This time, just describe the facts without any emotions present. This means acknowledging the difference between helpful and harmful, safe and dangerous, but not judging them as good or bad. Acknowledging your own values and wishes and emotional reactions, but not judging them. It's about being aware of your thoughts and feelings without getting caught up in them. When you find yourself judging, it's important to remember not to judge your judging and instead take a step back and observe your thoughts, feelings without any judgment. This allows you to see things clearly without getting caught up in our negative or biased thinking. So, how do we judge things? Often we look at discriminating versus evaluating. It's important to understand the difference between discriminating and judgment and evaluating judgment. Discriminating judgment is when you make a judgment based on facts and criteria, such as determining if a fish is fresh or old, or if a swimmer has met the criteria for a competition or doesn't. These types of judgments are necessary and acceptable. On the other hand, evaluating judgment is when you make the judgment based on personal opinions or bias, such as determining if something is right or wrong. This type of judgment is more subjective and can cloud our perception of reality. This is the kind of judgment we want to avoid when we're doing a mindfulness. So, in summary, it's important to distinguish between discriminating judgment and evaluating judgment. Discriminating judgment is necessary and acceptable. Evaluating judgment is subjective and clouds our perception. Additionally, it's important to make judgments based on consequences rather than the thing itself. So the word should can have two meanings in mindfulness practice. First is in order to. This is a non-judgmental statement that simply explains the necessary steps to achieve a certain goal. For example, I should exercise in order to stay healthy. The second meaning is reality should not be this way. This is a judgmental statement that implies that the current reality is not acceptable and that it should be different. For example, I shouldn't have to deal with stress. Using this word should is the second context. It can be problematic in mindfulness practice because it implies that there's something wrong with the current reality and that it should be different. However, in reality, everything happens for a reason. Every event is connected to a cause. But by judging the reality as wrong, you're actually judging the whole universe, and it's useless. It implies that if you were in control, you wouldn't make any mistakes. But it's impossible for anyone to be in control of everything. And mistakes are actually a natural part of life. Accepting that mistakes happen is an important part of mindfulness practice. In conclusion, when practicing mindfulness, it's important to be aware of the meanings of the word should and to avoid using it in judgmental context. Instead, focus on accepting reality for what it is and working with it to achieve your goals. Next, we want to avoid certain terms and phrases that can be important to the mindfulness practice, like the language of judgment that we looked at, and emotions that easily cloud our perceptions of reality. Makes it difficult to think clearly and make good decisions. One of the benefits of non-judgmental skill is that it allows us to see things as they are, without placing any value on them. This is hard. It leads to more specific understanding of the problems at hand, and it does also free us up to more easily solve. For example, instead of saying, hate my job, it's more helpful to say, I'm experiencing dissatisfaction with my job. This statement's more neutral and allows for the possibility of finding a solution to the problem. Another example is instead of saying, he's an idiot. It's more helpful to say, I disagree with his opinion. The statement's more neutral, doesn't put the person down. So, in summary, avoiding certain terms and phrases that are judgmental or emotionally charged can be an important aspect of life, and it allows us to see things more clearly and make better decisions. What we want to do with this module is notice judgment. So, when you're noticing when you're being judgmental, how do you know? When you start using words like should or good or bad. And so, one way that we can track this is counting our judgment. Judgment, or how many times you use them. What words are being used in a judgmental way? Being self aware is the first step towards change. So, changing our judgment. Once you've noticed these judgments, you can work on changing them. One way to do this is to replace judgmental statements with non judgmental ones. So, an example of this, instead of saying, I hate my job, let's look at saying, I'm experiencing no satisfaction in my job. This statement's more neutral, allows for the possibility of a new solution. And it's also important to remember that the emotions like dislike or hate aren't really judgments. They're feelings. And that can be a result of judgments, but not the judgment itself. So also looking at non-judgmental if it's a fact, but it is judgmental if it's an emotion. Next, the how skill, one mindfully. It's all about being completely present in the moment and focusing on one task at a time. It's about noticing the desire to be somewhere else, to multitask, or to be distracted, and then coming back to the task at hand. An example of this is when you're planning, focus on the task at hand and break down the steps you need to take. When you're remembering, focusing on the memory and the feelings it brings up. One mindfully skill also involves letting go of distractions, concentrating your mind. And if you find yourself being pulled away by other thoughts or actions, it's important to just go back to that one task at hand. Restart. The skill is about helping reduce multitasking and increase our focus and productivity by doing one thing at a time. Next is the effectively skill, taking the necessary steps to achieve them. It's about focusing on what works rather than getting caught up in emotions or personal opinions. When using the effectively skill, it's important to play by the rules and act as skillfully as possible. This means doing what's needed in the situation you're in, rather than the situation you wish you were in or the one that's fair or comfortable. Focusing on where you're at right now. It's also important to let go of willfulness, sitting on our hands. It's something we do to avoid situations. So this means taking action, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it's not done perfectly, or it's difficult. In order to achieve our goals, it's doing something. The effectively skill helps us to ensure that we're taking the necessary steps to reach our goals and that we're not getting caught up in the emotions or personal opinions that may prevent us from being effective. So that's the what skills and the how skills. So a summary is remembering that the only goal in mindfulness is to be mindful. Practicing the what skills one at a time, and the how skills, you can do them all.